Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Office Podcast. I am your host, Asan. Thank you to everyone that tuned into the last episode, which was the first episode of the series. And as I explained in that episode, these podcasts are literally just about the US Office, a show I've loved for over 10 years. And I don't know how often it's going to be, maybe every week, maybe every day. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but I'm going to be talking about characters, plot lines, episodes from my favorite show. And today we are talking about none other than my favorite character in the whole series. No, it's not Michael Scott. It's not Dwight Schrute. It's not Jim Halpert. It's not Andy Bernard. It's not Pam Beasley, who's my least favorite. No, we're talking about the one and only Kevin Malone. And the reason why we're talking about Kevin Malone and why he's my favorite character is because he made the show. Kevin Malone is the best character from The Office. And here's why. Kevin Malone has it all. He has the best intros to the show. So, you have the quick 20 to 30 second intro every single episode. Kevin Malone's have been by far the most legendary. Kevin Malone has gone from strength to strength, from season 1 hardly even speaking to season 9 owning a bar, which is outrageous, which we're going to get into. But no, honestly, on a serious note, I think Kevin Malone for me was my favorite character. His character development was absolutely crazy. His one-liners were the best. And again, the way he was casted in the show was absolutely genius. Whether it was on accident or by purpose, Kevin Malone definitely was my favorite character. Of course, Michael Scott was, man. Steve Carell is a legend, as are Dwight Schrute and Jim Halpert and all of the other, rest of the cast, like Creed's one-liners, even Meredith, was one of my favorites. But the reason why Kevin ranks so highly for me is because a lot of the times when the show was at its lowest, I think Kevin Malone, his one-liners, his overall contribution to the show was very strong. And just this episode, I wanted to go over some of the fan theories of Kevin. And, one of the reasons why his character changed so much throughout the whole series. And again, I think within the show, the character Kevin Malone, I think he realized that for him to get more airtime with the cameras and the documentary, he had to be a little bit more quirky. I think his character very early on in the first season, which again was a like for like for the UK version, he didn't have very many lines, and obviously the writers, changed everything and they went their own direction. Amazing move. Had they tried to emulate the UK version, it would have been a disaster. So season 1 as an introduction was okay, but by season 2 they had to change, which they did. And again, I think the character Kevin was a genius because he began to act in a certain way, which got the attention of the documentary makers. And just some of the things that he's done, the show alludes to the idea that he might be a genius. Was Kevin Malone a genius? Well, we're about to find out in this episode, and some of the theories I'm going to go over. So, like I said, his character change was drastic, and there's hints of him being a genius throughout the show, which I'm going to touch on a little bit later on. But the first obvious one is by season 9, he owns a bar, and I'm not sure how much bars cost, but they're not cheap. And the way he came across as he was quite simple. He probably didn't have a lot of money, and he was actually fired from Dunder Mifflin for being an incompetent worker. So, for him to be, I think it's in the last episode, him being in a bar, him owning Paul Richards, which is, kind of like the most famous bar from the show, was crazy. And you got to wonder how he did that. So, was he a secret millionaire? Was he a secret genius? Was him working at Dunder Mifflin a front because he worked for the mob? Was he a money launderer for the mob? All of these different theories and all of these different things have crossed my mind and other fans' minds. But the first bit of evidence that Kevin is a genius is that he owns Paul Richards by the end of the show. So it makes you ask the question, what really was happening? Another fan theory of mine, one of my favorite ones actually, was, are Dwight and Kevin really best friends? How close are they? And when Dwight had to assemble his sales team for the Tallahassee trip, for the opening of the Dunder Mifflin stores and the Dunder Mifflin pyramid and all that stuff, he asked Kevin if he would like to go with him. And I believe he agreed initially, and then Andy said no, he's vital to the operations for the day to day. So again, we've not really seen what Kevin was doing day to day. So I think there was more than meets the eye with Kevin Malone. I think he really was an integral part of the day to day runnings of the branch. I think Angela obviously was very obviously a big part, but I think her role was very obvious. She was the kind of like expenses lady. She was the party planning committee. She had her role, and you kind of knew what she did. Oscar seemed a bit more of like the technical analyst when it came to the numbers, and Kevin seemed more of like the straight up numbers guy. Like he works out what the numbers are for everyone and the company and how well they're doing. And I think one episode he's working out the commission for Jim. And the fact that Jim went to him to work out the commission can only mean that he must be a specialist in something. But yeah, so moving back to the idea of him and Dwight being good friends, why did he pick Kevin? He could have picked anyone else. Kevin isn't even a sales member of a team, so I think him being picked is definitely a red flag. I think it's, again, alluding to the idea that Kevin is actually quite an important character, and he is actually a pretty smart guy. And one of the other theories was the relationship that Pam and Kevin had. I think it was a very weird relationship. I think, Kevin was clearly very weird around women. But I think they had a very close, strong relationship, because I think one of the episodes Kevin was like, let me know what's going on. If you hear anything, let me know. And, she was shorter. She's like, I'll let you know. And she fist bumped him and everything else. So I think Kevin was a very big character in the office. He was liked by all. I don't think there was anyone that had a problem with him. I think the only time he really even swore, got angry, was with Holly, when she was showing her engagement finger and he thought she was flipping him off, and then he swore at her. And I think that was the first time we saw Kevin being aggressive. He's cried more than he's been angry in the show. So I think yeah, him and Pam have a weird relationship. I don't like Pam. I don't know if I made this obvious or not. I'm sure I mentioned it in the last episode. I'm not a fan of Pam. I don't like Pam. But again, when I do her character autopsy or dissection, I'll let you know the reasons why. But today we're talking about the famous Kevin. Another theory that really got to me was, again, linking onto the Pam friendship, was when she asked him to do the maintenance for the lift or the elevator. She asked him to change the buttons around. So, in the whole of the office, he was the most tech savvy. He was the one that could change the buttons on the circuit board of the lift, which is quite a technical job. You need some specialist skills to do that. And Kevin Malone somehow managed to do that, which was, again, another red flag. How was he able to do that? And, the fact that he referred to it as a circus board, again, I think the reason why he said that was he knew what he was doing. He knew it was called a circuit board. But I think because of his character, because he wanted to be, the clown of the show, he called it a circus board. And again, all these other different things he's done throughout the show, like, cutting out words from his sentences to save time, all these different things, I think, Kevin Malone, the character, played very well. Again, the writers obviously wrote all of this in, but I think him being like the secret genius is definitely evidence as to, who Kevin really was. And I think, again, with all of the characters, they had amazing developments throughout the series, and they went from strength to strength. I won't lie. I think all of them did. Even Creed, who was hardly on screen. Again, even Meredith, who, was kind of like a bit of an extra. She had her episode with when Michael ran her over and things like that. But I think Kevin, for me, was the perfect character. He was definitely someone you had to pay attention to from the get-go. He was always there. He was the exciting one. He was the one that was making the bets. He was the one that was talking about how he'd won the Poker Star Championship or whatever it was in Vegas. So again, it makes you think like Kevin he's got to be a genius. He's got to be someone who has a very high intelligence to have won a poker competition. Because again, poker, I've never played it before, but I assume, any card game, you need to be at an elite level to win in a Vegas tournament, which is like, the location, the main place to be gambling. And I think for him to win something like that only alludes to the idea that he was a genius. Kevin Malone was a genius. And again, I think the reason why he played the clown and the reason why he, got along with everyone and the reason why he started Malone's Cones and dropped the chili all over the place was to show everybody that, he is worthy of watching and he's worthy to be on the screen and have that screen time. But at the same time, it's for the wrong reason. It's not the typical, you work in a paper company or you work in as an accountant and you're very smart like Oscar, who's the polar opposite to Kevin. Oscar was very intelligent. He dressed well. He came across in an intelligent manner. And Kevin was the polar opposite. But again, was Kevin smarter than Oscar? Another question we need to ask ourselves. And he was also a part of a band, which I failed to mention. So I think he was part of Scrantonicity, and then Scrantonicity 2 after his band broke up. Later on, I think he mentioned it on, I think it was Phyllis's wedding, they played there. But again, I think Kevin Malone has most definitely been the most captivating character of the whole show. I think, if there was a spin-off show, I would definitely watch it. And personally, I think I'd probably enjoy it more than the main show. For me, this was the Kevin Malone show. Every time he was on screen, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole scene he was in. Even if it was for a few seconds, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think one of my favorite episodes was when Daryl and Toby were trying to sell him cookies. And he said that famous line. I won't repeat it on here because this is a kid's show. But yeah, he said that famous line. And, this was, I think, the very first time I saw that scene was maybe a good 7, 8 years ago. And, even to this day, whenever I see that scene, it makes me laugh. And even when I know it's coming, it makes me laugh. So for me, I think Kevin's the ultimate character. He has had the best development for someone that isn't a main on-screen character. If you really break it down, like, Kelly, who's in the annex, her development was okay. Pam obviously being the main character. I think Kevin had a better development than Pam did. I think he achieved more in that show than Pam did. I think he achieved more than a lot of people in that show did. And Dwight being the beet farmer and the entrepreneur, the business owner, the building owner, whatever you want to call him, I think Kevin turned out to be the most successful person in the office. And again, I think the writers wrote his character very well. I think if they'd made him too dumb or too smart, it wouldn't have worked. But I think they gave him just enough intelligence to make him interesting, and they gave him enough of a quirk to keep him level, kind of grounded. And I think for me, that is why Kevin Malone is the best character to appear in any show ever. I'm saying it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Kevin Malone is the best character ever to be casted in any show. And if anyone can bring me evidence as to why not, then please bring it. But Kevin Malone was definitely my favorite character of all time in any show. That is the episode today. Thank you so much for listening, or if you're watching, thank you for watching. I really appreciate the support. As I said, the first episode had a few views, which was really nice to see. And, hopefully this podcast will go from strength to strength as I break down the show, as I talk about, all of the things we really loved about this show. So thank you for listening. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace and love. Take care.